Recording in progress. So while we're all coming into the room, let's. Oh, no. Never mind. Linda's going to do a welcome. Go for it.
Okay. Welcome, everyone. We're still gathering. People are still coming. But I just want to say welcome, good morning. Thank you so much for being here. I also want to extend a welcome to the folks who are joining us online. And I want to remind people who are joining us online, please indicate how many folks in your house are participating so that we can make sure we get an accurate count. And we'll be starting in just a few minutes.
So while we're getting ready to start, we always sing, don't we? That's what I'm here. That's what I'm here for. Let's sing. We invite you to rise in body or spirit. Let's sing together. And to rejoice and come in. And to rejoice and come in. Today will be a joyful day. And to rejoice and come in. Open your ears to the song. Open your ears to the song. Today will be a joyful day, and to rejoice and come in. Open your hearts, everyone. Open your hearts, everyone. Today will be a joyful day, and to rejoice and come in. Don't be afraid of some change. Don't be afraid of some change. Today will be a joyful day, and to rejoice and come in. And to rejoice and come in. And to rejoice and come in. Today will be a joyful day, and to rejoice and come in. Then let's go on to the next one. Breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. So we need to have some of us keep that going, that breathe in, breathe out, breathe in. Now, some other people do this other part, right? When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. Breathe in, breathe out. Breathe in, breathe out. Breathe in, breathe. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in breathe out. I'll breathe out love.
Good morning. Oh, come on. Let's try that again. There are a lot of people in the room, so we should hear ourselves. Good morning. Good morning. All right. So welcome to the 2023 annual meeting. I am Linda Russell, your board president. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. We appreciate you being here in the unusual circumstance that we're having a meeting in lieu of our Sunday worship. If you are visiting us, you are welcome, and we hope that you come back and visit us next week for our flower communion. And we ask that in the interest of time, only members who have been members for 30 days speak at this meeting. Because what we do to all is sacred among us, especially our democratic process, I ask Reverend Leslie, our lead minister, to light our chalice.
We light our chalice this morning with these words. As we gather in the spirit of our living tradition, we do so grateful for those who have gone before us in leadership and in life. We honor the wisdom of their age and also the wisdom of those who lead today. May our deepest call be, though, to respect those who come after us, that they may also have the freedom to choose the path for their times.
So because we are conducting this meeting in the hybrid format, we need to be considerate of one another. If you're online, please use the question and answer to ask a question or to make a comment. And the co-secretaries will read these into the proceedings. In the room, please wait until a microphone is brought to you. We do have a couple of microphone runners today. All members asking questions or commenting, please state your name. Because voting takes some time, we'll be waiting after we've seen a show of cards because we're going to need to get the count from the online votes. And again, I want to remind people, if you're online, please make sure you indicate who is in the room with you so that we make sure we have an appropriate count. Mark Tuning will be leading us in singing while the votes are coming in. And remember, we're doing this particular format for the first time, so let's give one another a little grace and gratitude. So I'm going to ask Mark David Watanabe to read our covenant.
Oh, there he is.
Where is he?
Linda, would you remind?
Okay.
Linda, would you remind people online that if there's more than one member, they need to say it in the chat?
I did.
But there's people that have come in since you said it.
Oh, okay. I want to remind folks again, those of you who are coming in, the folks online, please indicate who is in the room with you so we make sure we have an accurate count.
Hi folks, this is Davina. I only need the folks that have more than one person to indicate in the chat. If it's just you and your call, it's all good. Thank you.
Okay, Mark.
Thank you, Linda. We begin all of our meetings by reviewing our covenant of right relations. We, the members and friends of the Mount Diablo Unitarian Universalist Church, covenant with one another to act in the following ways in our interactions and in all forms of communication. We speak and write directly, openly, and respectfully with each other. We support and encourage diversity within our congregation. We trust each other's motives and acknowledge that harm can still occur without malicious intent. We respect healthy boundaries. We honor community decisions.
So I need to ask if we have quorum. Pardon? We have a quorum to start the meeting. Okay, we do have a quorum to go ahead and start the meeting. And I'm going to ask. We do not have a quorum for the bylaws, not yet? Okay, we don't have the higher quorum yet?
Not yet.
Okay.
We can start the meeting with a standard quorum vote.
Okay, so we'll be checking again in a few minutes to see if we have the higher quorum for the bylaws. I am going to, our members value efficiency, so Ron Anand, Vice President, will read a motion on the rules of procedure.
Good morning, everyone. Excuse me, let me try that again. Good morning, everyone. There we go. I'm going to read a motion for the rules of procedure. This is something that we've been using for the last few meetings. It works out very well. We have plenty of forums ahead of time for discussion, for proposing amendments and that kind of stuff. And so by the time we come to today, we feel that the proposals are pretty much set. So in order to be able to get through the meeting on time and not to spend a lot of time trying to, wordsmith from here, I'm going to read the following rules. So these are the following special rules, and that is that we will have time limit of 2 minutes per person to speak on any motion, and that all items presented will be voted on without amendment. It'll be up or down. So that's the motion. Is there a second? Michelle?
Seconds.
Okay.
Can you say the name again, please?
Kate Lenhart seconds.
What do we need for
Ron made the motion.
We're going to need a 2/3 vote on this. First of all, I suppose we have to ask for a discussion? No. Okay. 2/3 vote, all in favor? All opposed? Appears that the
Okay,
ayes
the
have it.
motion passes. Yay, we did a thing. This is a good start.
Linda, may I ask us to remind everybody to, anything that is said needs to be said on a mic so that our online members can hear it also.
Okay,
And make sure that mic is live.
okay. Okay, online, all right. So we're going to give it another few minutes for our online votes.
Linda, we have 67 people online. People in here might want to know.
Okay, we have 67 folks online. So we're just giving a minute for the online votes to come in.
Okay, so the online votes are in for that one? We're waiting on the test. Okay, Rodney?
I have to tell you, it's very nice to see the church so full. So give yourselves a hand. Also, while we're waiting, I want to thank Andy Smith for being our parliamentarian today. Say what? So for anyone who is still coming in online, I just want to remind you to let us know who is watching so we can make sure we're getting an accurate count.
Yes, it is passed online. It is passed online.
Say what?
It has passed online.
Okay. All right, the motion carries. It is passed online as well. All right, now I need a motion to approve today's agenda. Okay, so Bob Alexander first and Don Green seconds. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, it carries in the room. Now we'll just wait for the online vote.
So if anyone can text anyone and ask them to get on.
We are just 5 people short of our super quorum, so if you know people, call them, text them.
You've got the vote now from online.
Okay. All right, so online, that motion passes to approve the agenda. So, all right, now if we don't have a super quorum yet. Okay.
We can vote on everything but the legacy, but we got people coming in, so.
Just go on with discussion.
Okay. Yes, go ahead.
You want me to?
All right, now we're going to, since we still have people coming in, we are going to keep hope alive, as Reverend Jesse says. And we are going to take up the proposed amendments to the bylaws. So I want you to please note that we've been discussing these changes to the bylaws for 2 congregational years. We have offered numerous forums for discussion on these items, and we are asking that these changes, that we work on these changes as one vote. We're leaving it at the one vote? So we're just leaving it at the one vote? That's what it is. Okay. Okay. If we don't have the higher quorum, and we're going to keep checking on that, then we're only going to be, and I want to clarify this with our parliamentarian, we will still be able to vote on our other items.
Yes, hi, Andy Smith, he, him, his. Without getting too pedantic here, essentially the requirement, so the agenda has now been set, and in order to split the item on the bylaws into multiple items, to split out the part that needs a higher quorum, that would require an amendment to the agenda that was just adopted, which itself requires a 2/3 vote to do. So it's an extra step, but it is something that is possible. And don't blame me, it's Robert's rules.
Andy, while we're talking about it, is it possible to switch the order and go to the budget rather than while we're waiting for our last 4 people?
Yes, I think changing the order of the items is the chair's prerogative, so that could be done
Gotcha.
without a vote.
Okay, just stay online.
Okay. Ron already presented those. Okay. All right, so we are trying now for our higher quorum. Where do we stand at this point?
No, we're just going to go ahead with our presentation. We'll check the format. We're only 3 short.
Ah, okay. All right, so we're going to continue. We're just 3 short of our super quorum. So we are going to just continue. All right, we have our quorum. Okay. Thank you for that offer, all of you. Okay, all right. So, as the higher quorum required for the bylaws amendments, so we've got that, which is great. Your board wishes to know that this is something that we have been discussing for quite a while. And so we're going to go ahead and get the ball rolling on this. So I'm going to start with, may I have a motion to approve the bylaw changes? Okay, Sonia Christopher moves. And actually, I saw Elsie Mills seconds. Okay, is there any discussion?
We have the presentation by Davina.
You're gonna? Okay, Davina is going to present. Go ahead. Board member Davina Smith is going to present the bylaws changes.
Hi, everybody. I'm here to talk about bylaws again. Can I get the next slide, please? I'm hoping this is the last time I have to talk about at least the change to the quorum in Article 12, but I know there are a few people here that might not have seen it before. So our bylaws have one section in particular that governs the Legacy Committee and the Endowment Fund. And when that was all established, there was written in there a couple of pieces, one of them saying that in order to change anything in that particular section of the bylaws, we required this larger quorum that we've been counting up to and just reached today. So round of applause, please, for us getting all of the people we needed in the room here and virtually. We, as a board a couple years ago, realized that this means that we're putting this item ahead in priority of everything else that we vote on as a congregation. It seemed out of proportion because all of the other business that we do, we require a regular quorum for. So the first proposal in the two major changes we're talking about today was to make the quorum for changing this part of the bylaws the same as all of the other parts of the bylaws that we regularly vote on when we need to make changes. The second part of it is we currently have a section in that same section that requires the board to deposit any donation over $5,000. Half of that right now automatically goes into the endowment fund. No ifs, ands, or buts. And during the pandemic, that made it especially hard to do things like, you know, we were struggling with how are we going to pay to keep all of our people and what are our real priorities here. And so we got to talking about it. And that proposal is to, instead of just automatically putting half of those larger undesignated donations into the endowment fund, we would be basically removing that section and saying that when we do receive donations of any kind that are not earmarked by the donor for something in particular, if we just receive an unrestricted donation, then we as the board have the choice, if this approves, to put that money into the endowment fund, any of our already established reserved funds, such as for buildings and grounds or for interns or for, those are the ones that I always remember, but I know we have more reserve funds than that, or to put it towards operating expenses that have already been approved in the budget that was voted on by the congregation. Those are the three places that we would, in the future, if this passes, be allowed to put unrestricted donations without coming back to the congregation and saying, hey, we have another idea for what we want to do with this. So what you are voting on today, in addition to a few of the standard updates and things, is number one, to remove the higher quorum requirement that we managed to get today, but sometimes really struggle with, like last time, and to remove the language that forces us to put half of large unrestricted donations directly into the endowment fund and give us the flexibility to put it either there or towards reserves or already approved budget items.
These are two different things we're voting on. Please use the mic.
That was my spiel. That was my spiel.
Yes. Did you get those?
So there was a question in the room, are these two different votes? No, these are one single vote. We are voting on it as a block right now.
Then I think we need to open up the discussion now that we know what it is.
Well, we're going to wait for the microphone to come back.
I'm Carla.
Hi.
I think because I have a yes on Part A and a no on Part B, I think we should open the room up for discussion. My gut level felt very uncomfortable with, should I make a large donation, it can go anywhere, where if I hadn't specifically designated it, as I really feel that at least a part of it should be designated to endowment.
Can I respond to that?
Okay.
Versus operational, or anything kind of related to kind of the long-term legacy versus the short-term survival. I would say up to 50%.
I hear you, Carla. We are actually I'm going to get our parliamentarian to tell us where we are in as far as motions and responses and stuff. To that point in particular, you can also designate all or part of your donation to go into the endowment fund if that is something that is important to you. That's still possible, either way.
Okay, so let's open for more discussion. I see a hand. Okay. Go ahead. And we are timing.
Yeah, this is Marianne Tubman. I'd still like to see address some stuff that I brought up back in January, I think, when I first saw this, which is the confusion of calling the endowment fund 3 different things in this section: David Salmon's endowment fund in lowercase, and church endowment fund. I think it should always, if you're going to capitalize partial sentences, which is a lot of the other edits to the bylaws, I think you should consistently capitalize endowment fund, because I know that confused me. The other thing is, if you're going to be changing it to all unrestricted gifts shall be deposited into the endowment fund, you don't need Clause A anymore, because that's what they're going to do, because unless otherwise directed would be other things other than the endowment fund. So I don't know why that's still there. I would recommend changing it to B to A and C to B and dropping A.
Okay. Okay, thank you for the comments.
Are there others?
I don't know if this makes sense for me to propose as a.
No, we're not doing, we're not doing that right
Understand
now,
that.
but
I can respond to her if you'd like.
appreciate it. No, let's, Mark, back row. Sorry.
It's all good.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Ursula Bartels. Happy to be here this morning. So my apologies for not reading all the details. I tried to read everything, but here's my big question. When you open up what was otherwise a restricted endowment fund and then allow it to be used for things including the operating budget, it just made me wonder, are we worried about money? Is that why we're doing this?
You want me to answer?
Yes.
Okay.
Good morning. Chris Carter, treasurer for a few more weeks. So I just want to address that question, and I want to be really clear that this is not about this has nothing to do with money that is in the endowment. This is about money that comes in that is undesignated and how it is used. Are we concerned about money? We always need to be concerned about our resources and where those funds go. And I can't predict what's going to happen in 2 years, in 4 years, and I don't know what the highest and best use is going to be in 4 years. And I bet it's going to be different than it will be in 2 years. And so this gives the leadership of the church the opportunity to make the call at the time about what that highest and best use is. So are we concerned about funds? We need to be concerned about funds always, and give some flexibility so that we can address the circumstances that the church is facing at the particular time. That's my take.
Okay. Are there any other comments? And one of the things to keep in mind is that we have had a lot of opportunity to address these issues in previous forums. I also want to remind people online, if you have a question or a comment, they should send to board. They can put it in there. Okay, you can go ahead and put it in the question and answer section.
And Linda, for votes, the second person sends their vote to board. That's
No, that's not what we're doing. No, we're doing it in the chat.
Okay. Any other comment? Sharon Solstice?
Sharon Solstice, she, her. I just want to point out that related to Mary Ann's comments and any other comments along that vein, that if we get the quorum changed, then we can clean that stuff up next time.
Okay. Tom?
Tom Taylor. What was the purpose of the supermajority?
Yes. Go ahead.
Ron Anand again. I wasn't around when this was set up, but I did speak with someone who was. And the idea of creating an endowment that required unrestricted gifts, at least part of it to go in, is to make sure that we continue to take care of and worry about our endowment so that we can continue to worry about carrying out the mission of the church going forward. However, it has become very obvious to me, serving on the board for 6 years, that the driver of what we're doing as the board is caring for the mission. And when we end up with really strange times, like the pandemic, all of a sudden we find ourselves in a situation where we have an endowment and we have money that has to go into the endowment, and yet we can't carry out our present mission. And the way that we ended up doing it was by cutting the lead minister's salary. That's not something that we like to do. That was leadership on her part. So I thank her for that, and this whole community really needs to thank her for that. But what we need to do is to worry and constantly think about the rules that we have and how they can best help us fulfill our mission both today and in the future. So the reason was to try to make it difficult to spend money and make it easier to save. We, as a board, are very aware of the purpose and the function of an endowment. This has nothing to do with spending money out of the endowment. This is just taking extra funds that are undesignated above $5,000 and saying, we may put them in the endowment, but we may spend them on other things depending on what the needs of the church are.
Catherine?
My name is Catherine Durr. I've been on the Legacy Committee for the last 4 years. We don't have a consensus. We don't have a consensus as a group, but this is my feeling about the whole situation. I'm not currently on the Legacy, as a donator, but I think that if people are considering donation in the future, they really need to think about where they would like the monies to go. And I think if they change their minds, I think they should have an opportunity to talk to people on the Legacy Endowment Committee. I mean, I took this role very seriously, and even to this day, I'm not sure what I'm going to do in the future. But I know that there have been people who have donated money and have not designated the monies. And there are others who want monies to go to specific things. I could see myself personally saying that I want X amount of dollars to go to this, and not just, let's say, I'm going to leave this amount of dollars, in terms of the amounts. And so I think when people decide to join Legacy Endowment, just seriously think about where you would like the monies to go.
Mm-hmm. So we are at 10 minutes, which is the time that we decided we would devote to this discussion. So would like to know if we can go on and do our vote. Okay. Okay.
So they call the question if it's a motion and then a second, which we've received. They can take a 2/3 vote to stop discussion and vote on the item.
Okay, so we need someone to call the question.
Well, no, they just did. There's been a motion and a second.
Okay.
And as long as that's been recorded.
Sorry, folks, this is new for me.
Here,
Go
want me
ahead.
to explain it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Hello, the pedantic parliamentarian again. So there was a motion and a second to call the question. What that is to stop all discussion and immediately take a vote on the item on the floor. That action to call the question itself requires a vote, a 2/3 vote to do. To end discussion, then immediately we would go, if it passes, then immediately we would go to voting on the item on the floor, the amendments.
I don't feel so bad. Okay. Okay, so
Can we get the names for the move and the second, please?
So who moved, yeah,
For
who
calling the
called for the
question.
question? We didn't get the name. Bob Olson called the question, and who was the second? Bob Maxwell. Okay, all in favor? Okay. Any opposed? Okay. All right. We're just waiting for the online vote now.
That is a lot of pieces to keep track of.
Okay. I wondered when that was done. So while we're waiting, turn to your neighbor and say hello. Okay. So,
So
I'm
now
going
we
to ask the
there's already been a motion and a second on the item itself, so now we're just going to take a vote on the item.
on the amendments. Okay. All right. So I'm just saying we have to vote.
So the motion carries to call the question.
Okay.
Now we're going to take a vote on the motion to approve the bylaw.
Okay. All right, so the motion carries to call the question. Now we're going to,
Still tallying online,
okay.
but it crossed the 2/3. Okay, thank you.
Okay, we have our 2/3. So let us vote on those in favor of the amendments to the bylaws. Should we just? All right, so rather than, you know what? Let's do this because we've got a lot of folks here. Let's do this. So we see who is in favor. Let's put your cards down, please. Indicate who is opposed. Okay. And now we're, okay, so I see no opposition in the room. We're not, oh, I'm sorry, I did not see you. Okay, I did not see all of you. Okay, so we're just waiting for the online.
Sing a song. Love will guide us. I invite you to rise in body or spirit. Let's sing together. Love will guide us, peace has tried us, hope inside us will lead the way on the road from greed to giving. Love will guide us through the hard night. If you cannot sing like angels, if you cannot speak before thousands, you can give from deep within you. You us. Greece has tried us. Hope inside us will lead the way on the road from greed to giving. Love will guide us through the hot night. And I want to thank Brett Carson for providing the recording for that.
Okay, do we have it? And we're looking for two-thirds?
Yeah, we have one.
Okay. All right, motion passes. You know, I really want us to thank the Bylaws Committee because this was hard. So please thank them. Okay, and thank you for your patience on, getting in the votes and just this because we're doing this hybrid, it really speaks to the fact that we are making sure that our community and our vote and our participation is available to everyone. So thank you very much for your patience. And now I'm going to ask Chris Carter to give the treasurer's report.
I'm glad you did that beforehand. Okay. Chris Carter, treasurer, he, him, and his. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a treasurer's report, and a lot of it's going to be dedicated to the budget. Most of it's going to be dedicated to the budget. So you have two items on your agenda. I'm really sort of combining them, if you will. So I'm going to start there. So what I'm really going to be talking about are three things that you can see on the slide that just disappeared. So the fiscal state of MDUUC, then we're going to talk about some lessons from recent budget history, and then we're going to talk about the actual proposed budget for 23-24. I will not be going into the detail that I went into at our forum. So if you're into the detail, I hope you either attended the forum or watched it online, one or the other. But we'll stick at it, we'll go through it at a somewhat higher level. So, okay, with that, let's move on and talk really about sort of the fiscal state of NDUUC. And I will say, it has been a turbulent 4 years, and you don't need me probably to tell you that. With the pandemic creating a lot of change in all of our lives and the way we do church. And it's also come against the backdrop where a lot of church organizations or church structures in our country have really been struggling. That's nothing unique to Unitarian Universalism, but it is broadly speaking, a lot of church organizations have been struggling. And yet, our financial position has really been very, very stable over the time. Had doubts about whether we were able to maintain that, and we'll get into that in a little bit more detail. But ultimately, if I look at the balance sheet over the course of the last 4-ish or so years, we've seen what I would characterize as two substantial changes, and they're actually both for the good. One, we have some additional cash that has increased, that's effectively reserves, and we'll talk in more detail about how we got there and how that happened in just a moment. And a lot of that is attributable, or one of the big factors that really drove that is generosity from members and friends. And the second change is we've seen some long-term liabilities have declined, some reduction in our long-term liabilities. That too has been due to members and friends, largely through legacy gifts that people have given. One, forgiving some of the church notes that members held that were forgiven through legacy gifts, as well as some gifts through Borton Estate that helped buy down our mortgage on Borton Hall. So I want to say, I think we are in a solid position. A solid position is very much analogous to where it was a few years ago. But we also can continue to be diligent about maintaining our fiscal strength, our fiscal house, so to speak. And so, as you look forward, I don't want to rest on our laurels, so to speak. I really want to think about the need to be diligent as we move forward. Okay. So let's move on to the next slide and talk a little bit about some recent budget history. And I went into a lot more detail about this in the forum, but here I'm just going to summarize and say that we have been budgeting as a church to use reserves for a number of years, at least in 4 years, yeah. Because, in part, because of the unknown situations that we were facing, much related to the pandemic, but unanticipated circumstances have meant that we have been ending the years with some surpluses, okay? And why is that? What didn't we anticipate that happened? So the first bullet here, first and foremost, that we saw revenue from pledges and member friend support that came in above budgeted levels. We'd historically budgeted based on the outcome of our pledge drive in the spring, but we've seen a number of years of history, and we'll get into some more detail here, where we're getting revenue and funds in excess of those pledge levels. Secondly, we had awards through the Paycheck Protection Program. None of us were sitting here 3.5 years ago predicting that we'd get $250,000 separated through 2 awards through PPP. So that made a big difference. There was also a UUA match program that was funded by a member congregation that gave us $50,000 that we weren't anticipating. And then lastly, we also have been going through a time of a really difficult labor market, and we saw some salary and other expenses that were below budgeted levels. If I'm running a church, I don't look forward to the idea, and I don't think it's necessarily good for the church to have empty or vacant positions, but it's a function of the labor market, and it happens. And one of the budget outcomes of that is that we end up spending less money on salaries and some other expenses than we planned. So if we move on to the next slide, you can just sort of see here that we had some surpluses from the years 18-19 through 22-23, and that last one on the right is a projection for the current year. It may be a little bit, the line may ultimately not be, or the column may ultimately not be quite as tall, but I'm pretty confident, given what we know right now as of early June, that we are going to land the year with some surplus. And in none of these years were we budgeting and planning on a surplus. But through those other factors that I just went over, we've ended up in a different position than we were anticipating. Okay? So let's look at pledges and donations in a little bit more detail and go on to the next slide. And the point here is to show where we had budgeted, in the blue line that's below, where we had budgeted pledge revenue and other gifts and donations, other than large-scale gifts and the like. But the yellow line above shows where the revenues are actually coming in, or in the case of the far right one, where that pledge and donation revenue we project is going to come in. And you can see those start to diverge. They were pretty close in 18-19, but they started to diverge. And the first big divergence came in 2021. If you recall, that was the heart of the pandemic. And I saw that and I thought, well, that's probably a one-time thing. It's nothing that I was particularly interested in counting on in future years. Then we see it again in 21-22, and as we're moving forward and looking at the end, we're not quite there, but looking at the end of 22-23, you can see we're again seeing revenues that are substantially above what we might think we're going to get as a result of the pledge drive. This is starting to look like a trend, and as we were putting together the budget, it was a trend that we decided it was important to pay attention to. Okay? So, with that as some context, I am going to move on to the next slide and start to talk about the budget itself. And I get that may be difficult to see, but it should have been in the packets that were available as you walked in the room. It had also been available online. So this talks about this references and displays the revenue that is assumed in the budget. And the most important line is the first line, and that's pledges and member/friend support. This is 72% of all budgeted revenue in the draft budget for 23-24. And it does account for some assumption that we are going to get revenue in excess of what our pledge drive might indicate, consistent with the history that we've seen over the course of the last 3 years. 2021, the revenue ended up being 15% of what we had budgeted, and then in 21-22 it was 16%, and this year it may be over 20% more. And so while the results of the pledge drive might have led us to keep that first line for 23-24 flat, which is to say roughly the same as it was in 22-23, our recent history has indicated that there's a good chance that we're going to get more than that. And so what you see here is roughly 18% over what we might have done if we were just looking simply at the results of the pledge drive itself. Again, relatively in line with the history that we've seen in recent years. The other lines here are important sources of revenue, but they're relatively flat, no big changes there. So I wasn't going to go into any detail there, and instead move on to talking about planned ongoing expenses with the next slide. This slide represents, there are two slides with expenses. This slide represents the expenses associated with compensation, and it's 76% of the total. We really are a people-driven organization, and our budget and budgeted expenses are largely for people. If you look across the different categories here, you'll see some shifting, although the bottom line is very much similar to what we have in the current year. The shifts reflect some changes in responsibilities that Leslie, as Chief of Staff, has made, certainly with the board's support in that respect. But there's also another change that was an issue that was referenced earlier that I do want to point out, which was an unknown at the time of the forum. And that is that in the forum, there was a question raised about the lead minister's salary reduction. And if it had been restored. And just by way of a little bit of background, there were two salary reductions. There was a 10% reduction that was taken, I believe, in early 2020, and then there was a 5% reduction that the lead minister and the Minister for Justice and Engagement took. That 5% reduction was restored. I believe it happened in the current year. But for the draft budget for 23-24, we have, dare I say, finally, restored the lead minister's salary, so it is now back to where it was in 2019. So that is reflected. So that is the big policy shift, if you will, that I would characterize here or describe here for compensation. So then if we move on to the next slide, we see other expenses, some for institutional support, as well as for the councils. We see some increase that's largely driven by things like utility costs going up. I did some revision on budgeting for taxes and the like. So the bottom line is a little bit higher for 23-24, but if you look more closely, you'll see that there are some lines where there are some substantial shifts, and those reflect the decision to shift where some of these items are budgeted. So I'll say specifically, for example, there were some technology expenses that we had historically budgeted in the Place Council, but Place Council really hadn't been making the decisions about how to do those, so they ended up getting shifted up into row 15 with office costs, because staff are really handling those kinds of expenses now, okay? So that brings us to expenses of $1,105,000. And so we move on to the next slide. We see the bottom line here, where you just take the revenue and the expenses, and there is a shortfall there of $37,900. And so what we've done in the green part of the section below, has made some assumption, again based on history, some recent histories. While we don't want to have positions vacant over the course of the year, history tells us that we will have some positions vacant, and so we're assuming some level of salary savings. It's 4.5%, which we then use to effectively lead us to the bottom line, where we have a balanced budget. Could we be wrong about the salary savings? Yes, we could be wrong. Could we be wrong about the assumed revenue from pledges and other donations? Yes, we could be wrong in the big picture. We will be wrong if you're going down to the dollar, but we could be wrong. But this is all in the context of a situation where we've been building up our reserves with the surpluses over the course of the last few years. And so it's important to remember that if we are wrong, we do have a cushion. We do have some room to absorb some unexpected changes. So I'm just going to move quickly through the next two slides. For those of you who are visual and are not so much into the numbers, you can see here, this is a pie chart showing our operating revenue, and the big blue slice of the pie there, 72%, that is pledges and member/friend support. It just sort of gives you a graphical representation of how big that is and how important that is for our revenue side on the budget. And if we move on to the next slide, we are looking at the expense side, and 76% of that pie chart, again, is blue, and that is expenses for compensation. Okay? So again, representing the same budget, but just doing it in graphical terms. So moving on to the last piece before we move on to questions or any discussion, is to say that, again, we do have those reserves. We are making some, I would argue, reasonable assumptions given our recent history. They're not the kind of assumptions we've made necessarily historically, but we have a number of years where we have some real shifts in terms of the way money is coming into MDUC and the way we are expending that money. And so we are making assumptions that those are going to continue. And I'm betting that that's right, given the history that we're seeing. But if we are wrong, we also do have some cushion with our additional reserves, which, just to give you a number, are roughly in the $350,000 range right now. So that is the summary of where the budget is, and I'm going to yield to Linda to sort of field the question and answer stuff, and happy to remain up here to help and answer.
10 minutes. So first, we're going to start with if there are any questions for Chris. And I will say that questions or statements on the budget should be reserved until we have an actual motion on the floor. But if you have other questions for Chris, please let us know. Where's our mic runner? Okay. And also want to check online if there are any questions coming in. So far, I'm seeing nothing on the floor, nothing coming in. Do we want to make a motion? All right. All right, Carl Livingood makes the motion, and the second? Okay, Dawn? All right, we have a second. So everyone in favor? Oh. Sorry. Dawn Greenlee. Okay, is there any discussion? Okay. All right. I think we are. Any discussion online? Nothing. Okay. All right, let's go ahead and vote on this budget. Okay. It's looking pretty. Jen, would you open the poll online? It's open, okay. Thanks.
And while we're voting, let's sing.
Okay. All right, hold on one second. Okay. Any opposed to the budget? Okay, in the room, I see nothing. We're waiting for online. Mark, take it away.
There we go. Do you have sound? There we go. I'm gonna turn it up a little bit. We'll remain seated while we sing because it's easier to see the screen that way. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we trust the wisdom in each of us, every color, every creed and kind, when we see our faces in each other's eyes, that our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we tell our story from deep inside, and we listen with a loving mind, and we hear our voices in each other's words, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place. We'll just do that much.
Okay. All right. Motion passes. Okay, and again, let us thank Chris Carter and Reverend Leslie. All right, now I'm going to ask Kate Newkirk and Mark Chase to come up and present the slate from Nominating Committee.
Hi, Kate Lowe Newkirk, she and they.
Good morning. Mark Chase, he and him. It's our pleasure to be speaking with you today on behalf of the Nominating Committee. Each year, the Nominating Committee works to solicit members of the congregation to serve on either the Board of Trustees, the Legacy Committee, or the Nominating Committee. Each of these committees has an instrumental role in the functioning of MDUUC, and we do not take our role lightly. We begin our year each September soliciting nominations for these positions from members and friends. Throughout the fall, we continue to gather nominations and self-nominations. Starting in January, we begin our discernment process with a series of votes and discussions that narrow down our selections. We strive to present a balanced slate of nominees that capture a cross-section of our church and involve people from different backgrounds. Once we've assembled a ranking list for each committee, we reach out to prospective members and ask them to accept our nominations. Then when we have our full slate of nominees who have agreed to serve, we assemble the list and present this to the minister and the board president. We also assemble the biographies of our nominees and assist with the mailing process. This year, we narrowed a list of over 140 individuals that we started with down to a slate of 11, which we're presenting to you today.
So first, we'd like to thank our outgoing members on each of these committees. If you hear your name, if you're here, raise a hand or rise up. Outgoing on the Board of Trustees, we have Linda Russell and Ron Onen. And of course, we have our beloved treasurer, Chris Carter. Termed out on the Legacy Committee is Catherine Durr. And finishing their terms on Nominating Committee are Patricia Craven and Peggy Kroll. So now for our, yes.
And Kristen Taylor.
And Kristen Taylor, so sorry. Always one, you always forget one. So here's our current slate that you'll be voting on for 23-24. For Board of Trustees, we have Andrew Oswald continuing. And we have new Board of Trustees members, Kevin Shea and Jim Lincoln. Please stand if you're present. Continuing for a second term on Legacy Committee is Suzanne Lofquist. And joining the Legacy Committee is Tom Adams. And then we have quite a list from nominating. Nominating has shorter terms, so we have longer lists. So continuing for a second term are Elsie Mills and Mary Beth Spencer. And newly on this slate are Catherine Durr, Casey Gardner, and Diana Ravutsky. I skip lines. Newly on the slate for treasurer is Sharon Solstice.
Okay. Let's see. So could I have a motion to approve the nominating committee slate? Oh, okay. Ms. Teplitz. Yes, okay. So we have a first and Nancy Moran is a second. So please vote on the, discussion. Is there any discussion? Online, any comments, questions, discussion? Okay, we're going to go ahead and vote. So vote for the nomination slate. Okay, and any opposed? Okay, I'm seeing nothing on the floor. Okay, Mark,
And while
can
we're
we
waiting
sing?
on the online vote, let's sing. We're going to try this one in a round, so you want to follow me a little bit. Liam? We'll sing through it once first, and then I'll lead you in the round. Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving. Ours is no caravan of despair. Come yet again. Let's start on this side. Come, come, whoever you are. 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 God is no caravan of despair. Come yet again, come. Come yet again, come. Come yet again, come.
Okay, how are we doing online? Okay, nominating slate passes. Again, it's a lot of hard work to talk to people, pull people in, identify folks. So can we give our nominating committee a round of applause? So, as I finish my time as president of your board, I can honestly say my biggest takeaway is commitment. Commitment to who we are as a faith community, commitment to participating in as many ways as we are able. As we illuminate in the beginning, in our values at the beginning of each service, this faith tradition is about shaping ourselves, bringing our collective values, informed through many traditions, to this community and to the greater community. This commitment is about consciousness and conscience. We don't have creeds that we follow. Instead, we commit to one another that we will see each other, that we will learn from each other, and that we will love each other. We are not a single story, but together we create an incredible narrative. There are times when we need to engage and approach one another to do difficult things, and this is when covenant is central to our engaging. Being honest, being willing to step into discomfort, to feel assured that we can walk away more whole than we began, because we believe in those around us and we believe in ourselves. Over the course of the pandemic, your board has dealt with many issues, centering the needs of our staff, our congregation, and our friends. It has been an honor serving with those who are committed to the well-being of this congregation, even when, especially when, our conversations ran late. It has been an honor working with Reverend Leslie, our lead minister, and the entire ministerial staff as they have mentored us, held us, taught us, and led with us. I cannot say enough about our incredible staff who has kept us up and running for these last few very difficult years. All have been the foundation on which we now stand. I'm pleased to be continuing with the work of Together We Rise, examining and shaping our strategic direction based on our core values. Our ministers have led deep discussions, diving into the meaning of each of our 6 core values. The final of these discussions is this Wednesday, so there's still time to participate. Together We Rise will continue this exploration on how we want to see our values reflected in all levels of congregational life. We're going to be creating some specific activities, and I encourage you to participate, not just showing up to see what it looks like, but showing up to bring your voice so that you can say, I am truly part of creating my faith community. I want to close with the words from the retired Reverend Tom Shade. My friends, there is a power at work in the universe. It works through human hands, but it is not made by human hands. It is a creative, sustaining, and transforming power. And we can trust that power with our lives. It will sustain us whenever we take a stand on the side of love, whenever we take a stand for peace and justice, whenever we take a risk. Trust in that power. We are together held by that power. And I will add, together we continue to rise.
might be a few more words to be said on this subject in a minute. I want to thank the 23 of you who took the time to watch the virtual lead minister's report that we put together. I would commend the rest of you the next time you need to dust or fold laundry or do something else to take a minute, because it truly is a testimony to the work that we have done together. It has been our practice in the last 7 years to do a little bit of an annual assessment of what we've done. And I think this year in particular, this 22-23, it's worth reflecting on the work that you've done together. So I commend it to you. It's about 14 minutes. It's a video that was sent to you earlier this week. But I sent that video in because I thought by this time of the meeting we would want to be short. And so therefore, this was my gift to you, was to not tell you all the things that we say in that report. I'm going to say just a couple things. And one is, I do know that people have questions, and so I want to say that I want to recognize that we are going to be honoring Mark Tuning after our 20 years as our music director on June 18th. We hope you'll be there. We do have candidates that have begun to come in for our music director search, and I want to thank Maura Mattingly and Dan Barnard, and also Juan Contreras for serving as our music search committee, along with me. So after the recognition, we're asking you to stay for a volunteer brunch. The mac and cheese is hot. I got word through text that it is warm and ready. And we are asking if you're a board member, a teacher, or a choir member. We've got some stickers that say that you are those things. And if you're anybody else who volunteered, we have other stickers. We're asking you to tell people what you did. Claim it. Because we need to understand that while our volunteer patterns are shifting, we still have so many people doing so many amazing things for this congregation. So if you were one of those people, please claim it on a sticker. And then we have a board set up against the Gilmartin building for you to just take a marker and say thank you to someone that you particularly appreciated, or some group that you particularly appreciated this year, because we have done amazing things under these circumstances this year. I want to also say the other thing I wanted to say in person, because it's really worth saying, is I'd like to ask every member of this board to stand. Unless you have stood in the shoes of one of these people, you have no idea what it has meant to be a board member in this particular time. Just trying to get the votes counted is an unbelievable process, and everybody is doing that. I want to thank my colleagues as well for their help in making this meeting run, and I just want to say what an honor it is to serve as your lead minister. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Mark David Watanabe. He, his, him. I know I have to keep this short. I will try to do that. But there's a couple of things that I want to make sure that the congregation was aware of. First, though, I do have a little special presentation I'd like to give to outgoing board president Linda Russell. As you know, we have been working on the Widening the Circle of Concern report and implementing those into congregational life here. Linda has been instrumental in her leadership in making that starting to make that happen. So Lynn Basquette, if you've been reading her columns in the Beacon, has prepared for you a special printing of the WCC report for your review, and use it as you will. And of course, the other thing that I want to mention, so thank you, Reverend Leslie, for the kind words toward the board. I want to say, though, that there really are two individuals among us who deserve special recognition for their faithful leadership through the immensely uncertain period that was the COVID-19 public health emergency. So the board would like to acknowledge they're spending countless above and beyond hours, probably many more than any of us are aware of, dedicated to keeping the MDUUC ship afloat and sailing forward. So I would like to call up Board President Linda Russell and Treasurer Christopher Carter. So the board is in the process of arranging little gift certificates for you, which should arrive later this week, so I'll keep you posted. But they are a token of our deep appreciation. So for Linda, you're going to get a gift certificate that we hope you will use toward your next getaway at Seacliff on the Bluff, for where you recharge your spirit in Mendocino. For Chris, you get a gift certificate to a family-friendly restaurant where quality time can be spent while doing grandpa duty. So we know these are mere gestures, right, to be sure, but please know that they represent the heartfelt gratitude of your lay leader colleagues and by extension, the congregation. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, wasn't expecting that. All right, so first of all, we did many things today, so let us give ourselves a hand. Okay, and before we extinguish our chalice, I need a motion to adjourn our meeting. Okay, Maura, Maura is our motion. I need a second. Kathy Teplitz, that's our second. All right, all in favor of adjourning our meeting? Okay, put your cards down. Anyone opposed? All right. All right. Okay, I am.
We are extinguish the chalice while we're waiting. We think it's safe to let me extinguish the chalice while we're waiting for online.
But thank you. I want to thank the online people for being here.
Thank you. We had 87 people online by the end. So these are the words for extinguishing the chalice. We have gathered as imperfect beings in an imperfect set of human constellations, and yet, despite all of this, we have strived from our best aspirations to do what we can to build the beloved community. May we bear witness today to the grace that we have witnessed, grateful for the glorious of seeing the magnificence of human striving.
Amen. Okay. You want to say we're adjourned, Linda? Say we're adjourned. Go to the volunteer celebration. All right. We are officially adjourned. Let's go celebrate our volunteers.